Latest Steelers news. Everyone thinks everything is calm, but the Steelers are going through a very different situation, and you're about to find out why. A controversy surrounding the quarterback that no one saw coming has just erupted because of Aaron Rodgers. The future of a former tackle selected in the first round of the draft by this team is suddenly hanging by a thread, and there's a situation involving Metcalf that no one is talking about, but they should, because it could change the entire offense. 3 news stories, all reported this week. Hit like if you're following this, because we're going to start with Rodgers and a situation that could turn everything upside down. Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers, because this is the kind of story that sounds wild until you actually break it down. Right now, Rodgers is the guy. He's the starter, he's the plan, and honestly, he's still the Steelers' best shot at competing in 2026. Behind him, Will Howard and Drew Aller, 2 young arms who have generated a ton of buzz, but haven't actually proven anything on a real NFL field yet. That's the gap we're working with here. Howard's been in the building for a year already, but here's the thing, he never even played a single snap as a rookie, not even in preseason, because a hand injury wrecked his training camp in 2025. So technically, he's ahead of Aller in experience, but practically, nobody's actually seen what he can do. Unless something goes wrong with Rodgers, the only real shot Howard gets this year is in August. Now here's where it gets interesting. Jerry DeLocke from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette did a fan chat this week, and somebody asked him a very specific question. What happens if the Steelers are under 500 by November? Would they actually bench a 42-year-old first ballot Hall of Famer for an unproven backup? DeLocke's answer wasn't a hard no. I don't think that will be the case, Bill, but to indulge you, they might be tempted to use Howard, DeLocke said. That's not a prediction, but it's also not nothing. Think about it. Rodgers is not the type of guy who takes a benching quietly, even at this stage of his career. He demands respect, he expects to play, and he's earned that. But the Steelers are also running a business, and if the season is already cooked by November, why not get a real look at what Howard can actually do? To be clear, this is the kind of scenario that would require everything to go wrong. Injuries, bad play, a complete collapse. That's what it would take. Nobody's expecting Pittsburgh to be out of the playoff race by mid-season, but the fact that an insider isn't ruling it out completely, that's worth keeping in your back pocket as the season unfolds. And just to add another layer here, Howard himself isn't a lock to even stick around as the backup. If he struggles in camp and preseason, Mason Rudolph could end up as the guy behind Rodgers instead. So there's a lot still up in the air with this quarterback room, even with a future Hall of Famer holding it down for now. Now let's switch gears, because this next one is even crazier and it just came out. We're talking about a former first-round pick whose time in Pittsburgh might be running out fast. Next up, we've got to talk about Broderick Jones, because this might be the toughest storyline of the offseason for Steelers fans to swallow. Ever since Omar Khan took over as general manager, he's made it a priority to fix the offensive line, and Jones was actually his very first big swing. Pittsburgh traded up in the first round back in 2023 to get him. 3 years later, that pick is looking like one of the rougher chapters of Khan's tenure. Jones has bounced between right tackle and left tackle his whole career, and every time it looks like he's turning a corner, something sets him back. This last setback wasn't even about performance. He suffered a real neck injury that ended his 2025 season early, and that injury is still hanging over his status heading into 2026. There's a real chance he starts the year on the physically unable to perform list, and even if he gets cleared for camp, the depth chart in front of him isn't exactly thin. Insider Nick Farabaugh went on 93.7 The Fan this week and basically said the writing might be on the wall for Jones in Pittsburgh. He could be a PUP list candidate, Farabaugh said. I think the way it's going, he could certainly be out there for training camp, even in contact drills. I actually think a trade makes sense here for Broderick Jones, with how much starting experience he has, and he is probably going to be buried on this depth chart. Let's just think about Dylan Cook, Max Ahinakor. Obviously, Troy Fautanu is a lock to start at one of those spots, probably left tackle. To me, Broderick Jones is in this weird spot, right? While Broderick Jones could be on that roster, I could also see them looking at that and thinking they could get a 4th round pick. Here's the part that makes this even messier. Jones hasn't played since week 12 of last season against the Bears. Because of the neck injury, he couldn't lift weights properly through the offseason, so he reportedly showed up to team activities noticeably underweight. Before any trade talk matters, he's got to get back to playing shape and get cleared medically. And look, trading a former first-round pick is never an easy pill, but Omar Khan has shown time and time again that he won't hesitate to admit a mistake. He's already moved on from Kenny Pickett after just 2 seasons, and he cut ties with George Pickens once that situation turned into a locker room problem. Both of those guys, by the way, ended up having stronger careers elsewhere than they had in Pittsburgh. So if the front office decides Jones is the next domino to fall, it honestly wouldn't be surprising at all. Alright, last one, and honestly it might be the best news of the 3. This is about DK Metcalf and why 2026 could be the year everything finally clicks. Last but definitely not least, let's get into DK Metcalf because this might be the most encouraging storyline of the 3. Before the 2025 season, Pittsburgh made a major splash trading for Metcalf, locking him into a deal worth roughly $33 million a year. The expectation was simple: give Aaron Rodgers a true number 1 target and watch the passing game take off. Year 1 didn't quite hit those expectations. Metcalf finished with 59 catches, 850 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Solid, but nowhere near what everyone pictured. A lot of that wasn't on him though. He was basically the only real threat defenses had to worry about, which meant double coverage all season long. Tough to put up big numbers when you're the only guy a defense actually has to respect. That's why 2026 feels different. Steelers insider Mark Kaboly has been pointing to a loaded group around Metcalf now. Michael Pittman Jr., Jeremy Bernard, and another full year building chemistry with Rodgers. More weapons means defenses can't just key in on Metcalf anymore. I'm going to take this over to the wide receiver room, Kaboly said on Steelers Collective. I am going to say DK Metcalf. He has got to be the DK Metcalf that we saw in the first 4 or 5 games, the difference maker, the guy we saw in Ireland making those big plays. He needs to be the legit $25 to $35 million wide receiver, the guy that can go down the field, the guy that can make every catch possible, and a red zone threat. Pittsburgh didn't just bring in Pittman through a trade. They also moved up in the 2nd round of this year's draft to grab Bernard at pick 47. Add Roman Wilson into that mix, and this receiver room finally has real depth. Now, that will be based off of what Pittman, Bernard, and Wilson do. Kaboly continued, if those 3 can help him out, I think he needs to turn into the top 10 receiver we saw flashes of last year. Let's admit, he did not have the greatest of seasons last year, but it was not his fault. When you get double covered and bracketed all the time, you kinda get frustrated. If DK puts up 100-200 yards and 8 to 10 touchdowns, that is very attainable. Throw in Mike McCarthy taking over as head coach, and this offense looks completely different on paper. If even half of these pieces click, Metcalf could finally turn into the dominant receiver Steelers fans were promised. Honestly, Rodgers staying healthy and Metcalf breaking out would change this whole season, but Jones getting traded, that one stings. What do you think happens first? Subscribe so you don't miss a single Steelers update.